Thank you for still being with us on G20 Overview on TVR World. We're now moving to the next topic. That would be THK, Blended Finance, right, Rahmat? And the Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs, are a set of 17 global goals set by the United Nations, or UN, that aim to tackle a range of issues from combating climate change to ending poverty and hunger. To achieve the SDGs, a significant scale-up of investment is required today, and blended finance is one of the critical approaches to mobilize new sources of capital for the SDGs. Blended finance is a structuring approach that allows organizations with different objectives to invest alongside each other while achieving their own objectives, whether financial return, social impact, or a blend of both. And blended finance creates investable opportunities in developing countries, including Indonesia, which leads to more development impact.
And to learn more about blended finance and its potentials to be developed here in the country, we're joined by three guests for the conversations. Allow me to introduce. And again, we are welcoming His Excellency Tantowi Yahya. He's a former Indonesian ambassador to New Zealand, Samoa, and Tonga, and also a skilled musician and singer. We all know that here. And he is now the executive lead of Trihita Karana Forum. Welcome, Your Excellency.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here again.
Again, for the next segment of our dialogue.
Yes.
With different topic.
Yeah. And also joining us for the conversations is the Indonesian Director for AVPN, Ms. Dini Indrawati Septiani. Dini, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me as well.
Yeah, and at the end of our conversation table, we are joined by Chief Program Officer of Asian Venture Philanthropy Network, or AVPN, Mr. Tristan Ace. Mr. Ace, thank you very much for joining us in this conversation.
Great to be here.
Right. We know you guys are extremely busy, so thank you very much for making the trip to the studio of TVR and World here in Bali, Indonesia. I'd like to go over to His Excellency Tantowi Yahya first. So can you enlighten us and care to elaborate on what exactly is the Trihita Karana Forum?
Well, Trihita Karana Forum, or THK Forum, is a new platform where all sorts of financing from the government, from public sectors, from the philanthropists, and also from the good-hearted people in the world are gathered, and then to be aligned with the projects of SDGs from G20 countries beyond, in order to support their SDGs projects before 2030. So as you know, that the cut-off year for SDGs is only 8 years away from now, which is there. And as a matter of fact, not many countries in the world have been able to achieve the SDGs. I'd say one of the problems that they face is lack of money, because the money that they have been used up for COVID response over the last 3 years. Yeah. So it's a big threat for those countries. And that is why the idea of collecting, like you said, all the money from many sources that we know that have been used up to support this project. So this platform is called Trihita Karana. Yeah. In Indonesia, we call Trihita Karana, which is actually a global blended finance.
Right.
Okay, so why do you use the words of Trihita Karana?
I like the question because you're Balinese.
Yeah, in Bali it means...
In Bali it means a harmonious relationship. Yeah, harmonious relationship between human with God, human with the environment,
nature,
and also the other
men
human
and other
beings.
Yeah. I think the main purpose of our life is to be happy, right? You agree with me?
Yeah. Right.
No matter what you do, no matter where you're from, our ultimate goal is happiness. And we adopt the concept or the philosophy of the Balinese people that have been practiced for hundreds of years, that in order to be happy, you have to be harmonious with people, you have to be harmonious with the nature, and don't forget, you also have to be harmonious with the spirituals. So that concept, I think it's very fine, very appropriate to be applied in the financial platforms that we are using. Because we are talking about happiness, happiness for the world. If they can reach the 17 objectives of SDGs, then the end result is happiness. Now, to reach happiness, they have to reach the 17 goals of SDGs. To achieve that, you need money, you need finance, and the money is coming from these
philanthropists.
Hita Karana Forum.
So
Yes.
financial support to
Yes.
reach SDGs, at
Yeah.
least 17 of them, as you mentioned. I'd like to go over first to Mr. Tristan Ace. Mr. Tristan, where does the Asian Asian Venture Philanthropy Network come in this forum and platform?
Well, once again, thank you for the opportunity to be with you today. It's great to have the chance to share a platform with Pak Tantawi here, a long-standing partner of AVPN. So AVPN is the Asia Venture Philanthropy Network. We're a social investment network. We're the largest of our kind in Asia. We have about 600 organizations that are all committed to using capital, as you were saying earlier on, in different types of capital to achieve impact goals, particularly focusing on the Sustainable Development Goals. So for us, blended finance is a really critical strategic objective. And so we've been delighted to be an impact partner for this year's G20 in Indonesia, really trying to push the impact agenda, whether it's around just energy transition, whether it's around the digital transformation of communities across
Or global health
Southeast Asia.
architecture,
Or
one
global
of the
health
three
architecture.
pillars
Exactly.
for the
exactly.
Indonesia's presidency.
Exactly.
So, what will be the framework here that will sort of become the guidelines for the framework to work upon and to review the achievements after all of these philanthropies gather from across the globe?
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the things that we've been doing is making contributions to various engagement groups. And one of those engagement groups is the Development Working Group, which has been focused on developing the G20 principles of blended finance, which set out a framework for how we should be really scaling up this really innovative instrument to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. So we really hope that as a result of the Indonesian leadership and the really strong leadership that's been shown this year, that these principles will leave a lasting legacy and really help to really scale up blended finance, not just in Indonesia, but globally.
Okay, so we're going to Ms. Dini now. When did the AVPN set foot in Indonesia, and how many members in the AVPN of Indonesia?
Well, actually, AVPN has been working in Indonesia for the last decade.
Okay.
Yeah, but
Quite a long time.
however, we just established the local team for the last 4 years. So right now we have 40 plus organizations and also 200 active members who like to do the partnership and collaborations in Indonesia. So among 600 members, actually, they are also focusing on the, gender and also educations, and separate all the, incubator, accelerator, government-related foundations, and big corporations, and also everyone that has an oriented impact objective to be collaboration in Indonesia as well.
Will it be solely on the achieving of sustainable development goals, or are there any other goals or impacts, as you say, that we'd like to achieve through these forums and platforms?
Yeah, so basically we are an impact investor network. So we are the biggest in Asia. So we have 600 members across 34 countries to be our members. And we identify based on their interests and mission and vision. So basically, we helping to achieve their goals toward the SDGs.
Right.
So the 17 SDGs.
Right.
Yeah.
Mr. Tantawi, back to you, Your Excellency. So what will be the agenda of the Trihita Karana Forum? What does it entail? Meaning that we have all of these contributing philanthropists from across the globe. We talked earlier, we have Bill and Melinda Gates and also Rockefeller. And would you care to elaborate more on that? What we're going to do within the forum itself of the THK?
Well, we are aiming $30 billion from the many sources that we were talking about, and one of which is through the philanthropists. That's why we are working cooperations with AVPNs, hoping that they can come up with several names that we can approach, despite of our existing efforts in approaching the philanthropists, world philanthropists, and some of them will be coming here to see the concept, to hear to see the presentation from some philanthropists and top and world recognized speakers that will be speaking in our forum on the 13th and the 14th of November. So hopefully that, but by coming here, they become more convinced on why they should support the Tri Hita Karana Forum.
So,
How will it be presented to our potential philanthropists coming in and flying into Bali from across the globe? What sort of, I'm not saying selling value because it's not something that we sell, but it's something that we attract them and feel inspired to contribute.
Well, it's not a one-time project. We have been working on approaching the investors, the funders, from, I should say, 2 years ago. I just joined this company for a year, and I have been busy with this, contacting, Zooming with the investors from all over the world, and that's good, So I get to know those people that I know from the newspapers and all these times,
man.
and hopefully, they could extend their grants, contributions, or funding to support the needy countries, so to say. So don't forget, Rahmat, nowadays there are so many rich people, philanthropists, that would like to do investment, not only hoping for the financial returns, but they want their investment to be impactful.
Yeah.
To be
Something
impactful
to
for the
give
nature.
back to the world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then, for the nature, for the social.
Right.
That's what you are doing right now, right?
Yeah, and there are many noble causes as well that we are pushing
true.
forwards. Instead of not just achieving prosperity and welfare across the globe and justice, but also all these social and artistic values, if I may say, contributing to the communities.
Yeah, right. I live in New Zealand for 5 years, So that is the time when I started to know better that there are so many rich people in the world, especially those who live in New Zealand, who would like to invest money to a project that have impact to the nature, that have impact socially.
Yeah,
Those are the
sustainability.
people that we are targeting.
Yeah. Well, focus of sustainability and climate change is currently in Egypt at Sharm el Sheikh, but it's something that we can adopt as well here in Bali while we have all of these heads of states coming in and all the philanthropists, as you say, coming into Bali as well.
Yeah.
What an opportunity. Defi.
okay, so going back to Mr. Ace and also Ms. Dini, AVPN held a global conference in Bali last June. So what were the results actually of the conference, Mr. Ace?
So in June this year, we hosted our annual conference. It was the first conference in person after the pandemic, so it was a fantastic opportunity to bring a really amazing group of leaders, impact leaders from across Asia, even indeed from across the world, to Bali. So we hosted it, in fact, right here in this venue where we are today. We had about 1,200 leaders came, and really, I think, going back to what Tantari was saying earlier, we've seen increasingly public resources being squeezed, having to focus on crisis after crisis. There's a real need for private capital, both private wealth, but also philanthropic capital as well, to step up and to think harder about how we use that capital to drive change and to look at the systems level change we need to address some of these critical challenges you highlighted. The COP and the issues of climate change, for example, the need to achieve an energy transition that is just and that doesn't leave anybody behind. Well, philanthropic capital can play a critical role in achieving that. In terms of some of the things that we're doing beyond and that we sort of started to percolate at our conference in June, but that we'll be announcing in fact tomorrow, so I won't want to give too much away just now, but we're looking at how we can work more strategically with the THK and the Tri Hita Karana Forum to really promote and build on a lasting legacy of the Indonesian presidency. That's certainly something we're committed to doing. The second thing we're looking at is how we can really focus on inclusion, the big focus on, particularly on gender, how we can ensure that we can address the issue of women and women accessing finance, accessing opportunities to grow and run their own businesses as well. So we'll be launching a specific task force which will be focused on gender-led businesses and looking at how we can encourage a much more enabling environment for women-led businesses to thrive as well. So those are two of the things that we're hoping will be lasting legacy of our work this year in Indonesia.
So how's the AVPN Global Conference result impact to giving benefits to the Indonesia, do you think, Ms. Dini?
So thankfully for everyone trust as well and make it a collaborations among Indonesian organizations, basically. And then basically like we trying to gather with 25 million gender pool fund right now, and also coming from the Indonesian market as well. And then basically we engage with several key stakeholders. For example, the Ministry of Developing Planning, or we call Bappenas, for the blended finance notes, and also with the Ministry of Tourism and Creative Economy. So we're supporting, social enterprises under the ministry, and then supporting on how to promoting the wonderful Indonesia destinations to impact
with the Ministry of Tourism and Creative Economy.
Yes.
So you do work closely together with government representatives, related ministries, which brings me to my next question. It's inspired by what Tristan just said earlier, that our forum will also shine a light on the gender-owned businesses. In this instance is women-owned small and medium enterprises. You represent a woman yourself. How hopeful are we this forum can truly be a platform to support women-owned businesses, SMEs in the country?
So basically, it's a very good question. So as we understand that based on the research that the women lead actually for the social enterprises like getting increased. And then they need also the capacity to strategizing their business model, and how we also advocate the regulations through Kadin as well, and on helping the regulation through the process of the submitting the the legal entity, for example. So this is the process that we are also doing through the private and community organizations, and not only through government related relations as well.
Right. Mr. Tantowi, you mentioned that you've been communicating intensively with all of these stakeholders, our potentials, investors, and also philanthropists from across the globe, expanding the network, if I may say. What have been the responses so far that you've received? You can sum it up for us.
Well, from the non-government partners, the response has been very awesome. The response has very encouraging, and it is confirmed by their presence in the conference on 13th of November. So having those big guys, in Bali, and then commit to finance the SDG project, I think it's very rewarding. And the philanthropist side, I think it takes them shorter time to decide. Compared to the government sectors, they have to go through bureaucratic streets and roads, like speaking to the Congress, and then get approval from the Congress in order to support a project or to join the alliance that we're going to build. But speaking from the overall perspective, the response from the market has been very encouraging, and it makes us very much in high spirit to continue that even after the G20 summit.
Okay, so so how many big philanthropists that have confirmed to attend the THK forum this year?
It is not a confidential information.
I think it's confidential, but all the big names that you have in mind.
Then how many, if we may know the number?
Well, we're speaking about at least five big philanthropists that will be coming here, and hopefully that they can sign up. Because there will be a signing of a Global Blended Finance Alliance in front of our president on 16th of November, on the 14th of November, when we do joint session with B20.
Okay, so on what kind of projects that they are interested on?
We have nine outcomes and 7 key launches. So 17 altogether. When we talk key launches, it's programs that will be launched. Okay, in the corner of G20. But when we talk about outcomes, I mean, it's a program that has been approved, and there are some organizations or philanthropists that will support them. It will be announced on the 14th of November in front of the presidents. But our target is $30 billion US, that
30
come from.
billion.
So that's bill, not a mill. I wrote mill here. So it's bill, sir.
It's Bill.
Okay, I would have lost a lot of zeros then. 30 billions target.
It's bill.
Wow,
Mill is my money.
wow,
Hopefully, you know, everything works. Yeah, those people are coming, and then they don't change their mind. Yeah, right? They
Yeah.
don't change their mind, and then they
Hopefully.
support the projects.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Right.
And the projects are not only Indonesian projects,
Yeah.
but G20 countries projects.
Right.
We support any project in the G20
Yeah.
countries and
Yeah.
least developed countries like the island countries in the Pacific.
Right. Tristan, it is a huge prospect in this forum through the THK forum. Are there any challenges in terms of managing these diverse capitals? I mean, blended finance is something that probably not a lot of us are very familiar with.
Yeah.
So what are the challenges there?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good question, and of course, there are challenges in mobilizing capital and aligning interest.
Yeah.
I think, but having said that, I think one of the biggest challenges is a misperception that there's risk in investing in
You're right.
emerging economies, and in fact, we need to challenge that that perception because. In fact, when you look at the challenges we face, the need to to really focus on how you invest in renewable energy, for example,
Yeah.
it's of critical importance right now. So it should be seen as a real opportunity for investors. So that's the first thing we've got to challenge is that myth that these are risky investments. They're not. They're absolutely essential
You're
for the
right.
future of our planet and our communities. That's the
Yeah.
first thing. The second thing is really how you align investor interests. So you have these different investors. They have different priorities or outcomes that they're looking for. Some are really focusing on commercial returns, really very much looking at how they can maximize the profit from an investment, whilst others are looking purely at social returns.
Yeah.
How do you bring those two perspectives into one investment vehicle? That's a real challenge. And that increases the cost of transaction, increasing the cost of putting those deals together. So we need to bring down those costs, and that's again where philanthropic capital can play an important role in helping to bring down the cost associated with those transactions. So those are two key challenges that certainly we've seen, and certainly our community tell us prevent them from mobilizing capital.
Yeah. During our previous conversations with Mr. Tantowi, he touched a little bit on the green finance and sustainability and supporting projects that are environmentally friendly are a part of the green finance. From your analysis so far and from other philanthropy projects that you've handled in the past, is it some sort of a sexy investment for our philanthropists to take part in the green finance?
So, well, in fact, I think at the moment, if I'm going to be completely frank, the opposite is true. It's very difficult to mobilize philanthropic capital for climate change.
Because it's not something that you see immediately.
Exactly.
You're
It's
right,
a
you're right.
long-term investment.
This is exactly the challenge. It's not something that you can see immediate impact from. It's also something that is cross-border, that it's difficult to really grasp and to measure. And it will take 10, 15 years before you see that impact.
Yeah.
So we really need to encourage philanthropies to be much more focused on investing in these long-term solutions, because they're absolutely critical for the sustainability of this region, and particularly given the vulnerability of countries like Indonesia to climate change and the climate risks that particularly some of the more vulnerable communities face. So I think that's one of our key challenges, is how we can bring some of this, and as Pak Tantari mentioned earlier, we see a huge explosion in wealth in this region. We have the fastest growing number of billionaires
Wow.
in the Asia Pacific.
I'm one of which.
That's why he said 30 mil is a change for me.
Exactly. So you see this growth in wealth. We've got to encourage this new community of wealth holders, this next generation of wealth holders, to take more risks, to be more courageous, and to think much more for the longer term around, because that's the only way we're going to meet the challenges that we face.
But is that actually feasible? Just for this point, Devi, Mr. Tristan, is that actually feasible to incite this thought to transpire changes? Because for most investors, the sooner you see the return, the more exciting and the more attracted you are to it. So
as Dini said, we've been in existence for 10 years. 10 years ago, you would never have invited us to have a conversation with you. This conversation was on the margins.
On the
Now we see mainstream investors. We see impact.
Right,
We see funds actually taking this agenda really much more seriously. We saw that change shift around the financial crisis back 2009, but I think it accelerated during and after the pandemic when we realized that people began to question much more the purpose of their existence and realizing that, you know, when you're stuck in lockdown, it doesn't really matter how much money you have. You can't really, you know, there's nothing you can do if we're going to be ridden by disease and also, you know, concurrently climate change as well. So I do think that we're on the cusp of seeing a great transformation in sustainable finance more broadly. And I think that is precisely what AVPN has been doing, is building this field over the last 10 years, really building the social investment landscape, and that's what we do. And so I'm optimistic and hopeful that we are on the cusp of something truly transformative.
Something extraordinary, in terms of the sustainability.
I want to go to Ms. Dini. I really want to know how big is actually the interest of the philanthropists in Indonesia to do the green financing itself?
So I think it's back to Tristan's comments as well. I think it's still a long journey for us as well, right? I think we need to collaborate together to educate the market on how to engage and invite them to, you know, to have the same languages, you know, the common language about the impact, about the, you know, the how they can actually contribute to the society and to the world, right? So I think this is a long journey for us, and this is the power of, you know, AVPN and also Trihita Karana Forum, that we can gather all the philanthropists, all the, you know, from the corporate side, also from the, you know, government-related specific thematic issues that come together with the same like-minded people, right?
So do you think that the THK Forum would be a great platform to discuss and also to ask the philanthropists to do that green financing?
Definitely, just like us, right? When we are in the same ecosystem, we can learn each other, right? We can inspire each other, and we can meet with the same decision maker to make you know, tangible you know, actions.
And tangible change.
Yes.
Too. Something to add on this, Mr. Tantowi?
Yeah, I just would like to echo what was said by Tristan. So, two big challenges that we are now facing. First is that SDGs projects have long been perceived as uninteresting projects.
It's been stalling, right, in the past years.
So it doesn't promise you big financial returns, and it takes a long time till you get the fruit. So that conceptions of thinking that has to be changed, and it has to be done by a lot of work, you know, continuously and through big corporations, you know, among the institutions that have been dealing with this issue. So our cooperation with AVPN and other similar institutions, you know, will be in the long terms, because one of the biggest job we are doing right now is educating the people, educating the market.
Right. Back to you, Ms. Dini. I was interested with the fact that when we say the word philanthropy, it is often and almost always associated with wealthy people. And added to the fact that Mr. Tristan said that there's been a boom of wealthy people, particularly in the region, including our ambassador here, as he said so himself. So what has been the main interest of philanthropic projects, if we look inward in the country, other than the green finance and focuses towards you know, giving back to the people?
So first of all, I think educations and gender actually is also specific thematic issues that they are interested in. And also, actually, interestingly, in our ecosystem, we also acknowledge like university as a part of our funders categories, because they can contribute non-financial support. They have the intellectual and knowledge and also time to, you know, giving back to the community as well.
Can you give us some clear and some impactful changes that have been incited, that have been inspired by our philanthropic movement in the country, in Indonesia?
So, for example, one of our members is YCAP. So they actually been like 15, 20 years from now. And then they have been working closely with women empowerment, and then they have a very, what call it, like a fund to supporting women empowerment initiative as well.
Providing capitals for them to for startups.
Yes, like microfinancing as well.
Oh, okay.
I think it's very interesting for them to supporting the ecosystem of supporting the woman empowerment.
Right. And for education sector, such as scholarship, for example, or
yes, for example, like from our philanthropies member is Tanoto Foundations, Indica Foundations.
Right.
So it's part also from our members.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's go over again to Mr. Tantowi Yahya. Sir, you mentioned that they have planned to come into Bali in the near future. And in a couple of days, heads of states will be arriving, presidents, prime ministers, representatives of the European Union, including some notable names within the G20 and beyond. And next week, the 15th and 16th, all eyes on Indonesia for the summit. Hita Karana, when will it take place?
We are one of the side events.
Okay.
And our conference takes place before the summit.
Okay.
So it's the 13th and the 14th.
The B20, was that within the B20
We
dates?
we are happening in parallel with the B20.
In parallel with
13th,
B20.
Yeah, 13th and 14th, right? And then 15th and 16th are the summit, are the big days for the G20. So hopefully that whatever results that will arise both from B20 and THK will be in the leaders' declaration.
Oh yeah.
So we are aiming at big outcomes, from those two events.
Yeah. So what has been in plan for the agenda of the forum, the THK forum? Because the 13th and the 14th is just a matter of days from now on. So all the preparations must be already in place as we speak at the moment.
Yeah. So on the first day, on the 13th of November, there will be plenaries. Open officially by ministers, and then after that followed by the breakout sessions or the concurrent sessions, also attended and officially opened by ministers or deputy ministers, and then each breakout session will be attended by the philanthropists, by the funder, by the investors, and those that have interest in the blended finance.
Right.
So hopefully we can have about 300 people that will attend physically, plus another 200 that will be present virtually. So we are speaking about 500 to 550 people.
Right. So by the end of the THK forum and the B20 as well, do we expect the 9 outcomes and the key launches that you mentioned earlier to be realized? Or do we take more times for these to happen?
The outcomes, yes, there will be a time where
9 outcomes,
we will announce that.
Okay.
Okay, but for the initiatives or for the plan that will be announced either on the 13th, 14th, or the 17th. Our events does not stop when the summit stops. So the THK forum has two outcomes. The first, the blended finance. That will be discussed on the 13th and the 14th. And then the second one is the future knowledge.
The future knowledge.
The future knowledge that will be announced, that will be exercised in terms of conferences, seminars at our Kura-Kura Bali from the 17th to the 19th of November.
November, the week after.
Yeah.
Okay, so we are going back to talk about the blended finance. Mr. Ace, I want to have your views about if we go beyond companies, even poorer countries also facing more restrictive financing. Do you think that a blended finance could be a part of the solution for the poorer countries?
I mean, I think absolutely it has to be part of the solution. Of course, governments need to contribute to particularly addressing some of the climate impacts that some of the poorest countries, particularly as Pak Tantari said, some of the small island states in the Pacific, for example, which again has been a focus of the work that's been done this year as part of the G20 blended finance principles, real focus on the most vulnerable communities. So I think governments have a role there. But absolutely, I think that blended finance can play a role, particularly, and this is where the philanthropic capital can play the most important role, because this is the capital which is the most precious resource we have. Okay, this is the capital which doesn't demand any financial return at all. So we've got to use it really, really, really sparingly.
Yeah.
We've got to use it really to focus on those issues that are the most difficult and to focus on investing in those communities that are the most vulnerable. So I think this is where philanthropy can play a really important role in addressing the most vulnerable needs of communities, particularly if you think about energy. We've not only got to transition to a low carbon economy, we've also got to ensure that the current 4 million or so people that don't have access to energy and the even greater number of people that don't have access to reliable energy can also have access to energy. So how do you do those two things at the same time? You've both got to decarbonize your economy whilst also bringing people, giving them energy access. So I think this is where philanthropic capital can play an important role, and we've got to encourage it to work harder for those at most risk.
Well, one of the common denominators is poverty across different nations in the world. Has there been a precise program or projects that address these challenges, how these capitals will be managed to address and alleviate poverty at Tristan?
So one of the things that we do, we're partnering with an organization called the Council for Inclusive Capitalism. In fact, we have an event tomorrow morning with them to really look at how you can, and this relates to the just part of the energy transitions, how you can ensure that the communities that perhaps have had the least impact on causing climate change and are often the most negatively affected by it, they are able to benefit as we make that transition. So I think this is a particular example of a framework for companies, which is encouraging them to think about how they can act to ensure those communities that are most affected cannot be left behind is a commonly used phrase here.
As our president said, Defi, no one should be left behind. It's been echoed over and over again throughout many deliberations within the G20 this year. And we've just been made aware that His Excellency Tantowi Yahya can only be joining us until 5 p.m. So we have a few more minutes, precious, valuable minutes with you, Your Excellency. Just one final question to you. As you said, it's going to be held in parallel, simultaneously with the B20. So in coming days, it will be happening. So what is your expectations for the THK Forum at the end of its run? And will we have, is it realistic to dream of the 30 billion check of contributions from our philanthropists across the globe?
Yeah, first from the investor, from the funder, we do expect that we can have some pledge at least, or even the funding from them in accordance with the project that they chose. And second, for the non-investors, we do hope that we can make this event as an education forum for them to get to know better, to understand better about what global blended finance is all about. So it has been well understood that blended finance is one of the best solutions to overcome the SDGs gaps before 2030. And then even in the long run, after we have accomplished the SDG goals, I think the concept or the discipline of the principles of blended finance can be implemented in all projects that needs funding from many sources. So for the time being, when we talk about global blended finance, it's for the SDGs. But I think for the long run, it can be used also for other purposes. That's what we need. That's why we need to educate people about this.
So I guess we're just going to have to wait and see how things will unfold at the forum and at the B20 engagement groups of the G20. So in the meantime, we'll have to thank His Excellency Tantowi Yahya for your time and your valuable insight. Thank you very much, Your Excellency.
Thank you so much,
we will be continuing our conversations with Ms. Dini and also with
Mr.
Christians
Ace.
in a little bit, Defi. And we will take a short break here on TVR World. Do stay with us on G20 Overview. We'll be right back. You are still watching G20 Overview here on TVR World, coming to you live from Bali, Indonesia. We're still in conversations with AVPN. I'd like to go over directly to Mr. Tristans in our last minutes and final segment of our conversations. The summit in just a few days, G20 in Indonesia and beyond. Where do we go forward from here in terms of our philanthropic work?
Well, for AVPN, I mean, we are really excited because we see 4 emerging economies hosting the G20 in succession, starting with Indonesia,
Indonesia.
moving to India,
And
then
India.
to Brazil, and then
And
off to South
Brazil.
Africa after that.
Colorful nations, I must say.
Exactly. So really, it gives a great opportunity, I think, for emerging economies to take a real leadership role in addressing some of the critical challenges that we face. And I think the leadership that's been shown by the Indonesian presidency, where you've really been prioritizing, as you said earlier on, the most vulnerable communities. And secondly, really prioritizing solutions that come from emerging economies. We really want to see that leadership continue, and at AVPN, we'll be working to really ensure that the learning that we've gained this year and the commitments and the progress that we've made, particularly on promoting blended finance, promoting gender equality, and also trying to promote the just energy transition, that those 3 agendas are continue to India, they continue to Brazil, and they continue to South Africa, so we can really make sustained long-term impact.
Right.
Well, one very last question for you, Mr. Ace. What is your goal for the AVPN itself under India's presidency next year on G20?
So I think our goal is to really emulate the success that we've achieved here in Indonesia. I mean, I think we've had a fantastic partnership with the Indonesian government, supporting various engagement groups. And I think that what we're trying to do is create a platform for this community of these socially minded organizations. There's 600 of them that are part of our network. Collectively, we believe that they can transform finance. And so we think that it's so important that they work with governments hand in hand to ensure that, that governments can really maximize from the potential that this community has. So in addition to trying to be as successful as we have been this year in Indonesia, we really want to demonstrate the value for governments engaging strategically with this community, because if they do so, then I think the potential is enormous.
Okay, so I want to touch on social investment to you, Ms. Dini. Do the philanthropists have the same vision and mission related to the social investment itself?
So basically, everyone need to have the same language of what is the social investment is, right? So after they have the better understanding on how they can put effort on their role, and then everyone and have a collaborative philanthropy. You know, we also have a 7 pool fund right now, specifically supporting and health, gender, and education as well. So I think it's very important for everyone, especially in Indonesia, has the same understanding, the common language about the social investment itself.
Are we optimistic this will happen anytime soon? Streamlining our visions in terms of...
I think we need to be very optimistic, right? Because we have as a network, we can identify who has the same vision and mission, and how we can actually, as a connector, we can help them to find the right partner to helping their own objective and goals, right? So I think it's very important for us to also can connect and they can learn each other.
So unfortunately, Devi and all of our guests, we've come to the end of our conversations. There's a lot more to unwrap. And in the meantime, would like to thank our guests to join us for this conversation. Chief Program Officer, Asian Venture Philanthropy Network, AVPN, Tristan Ace, and also the Indonesian Director for AVPN, Ms. Dini Indrawati Septiani. Thank you for your time and your insights. We wish you the best of luck for the forum.
Thank you.
So let's change the world together in a good way for the good cause. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank
Great
you.
to be here.
And that brings us also to the conclusion of today's editions of the G20 Overview here on TVR World. Finally, I'm Rahmat Idris.
And I am Chodefi. Thank you so much for being with us on G20 Overview. And coming up next is the focus today. So stay tuned with us on TVR World. Goodbye for now.
So what's this evening?